r/NoSleep. Posted by u/hymnofshadows. My summer camp experience didn't go as planned. Part 2. Welcome to Camp Meadowlark. I'm back again. I forgot to say something important in my last entry. If you live anywhere in Oregon, do not go in the wilderness. It is not safe there, and you'll find out why. In fact, if you live anywhere in the Northwest US, I wouldn't go alone in the woods or avoid them altogether. I've been watching the news for that area and haven't seen anything too crazy, but I still don't think it's safe. I know right now these entries aren't wild yet, but everything I mention has some importance to what comes. If I was making a movie or something, I could say I walked into the summer camp and half the campers had turned into zombies. Unfortunately, it was just small stuff at the beginning, but it's all important. From here on out, I'm gonna try to post only the entries and not interrupt, so here you go. Wake up! Wake up! I was jolted into consciousness by a loud yell. For a second my eyes peered up at the high white wooden roof above and I didn't recognize where I was. Then it all came back to me, where I was and how I got here. Then I remembered the weird screech I heard last night while drifting off. I wonder if Philip heard it. He would love this kind of thing, I thought to myself as I jumped out of my bed. I felt a sting in my bladder and realized I hadn't used the bathroom once since I had gotten here. I looked around and saw everyone else slowly getting out of bed and getting dressed. I felt an overwhelming amount of joy when I saw the familiar face of Tyler. I recognized his curly black hair without him even having to turn around. I began to speak up but was interrupted by Mr. Turner's stern voice. "All right everyone, stop what you're doing and listen up. First of all, if you don't know already, my name is James Turner. I'm a senior counselor here at Camp Meadowlark. I'm in charge of you all, and I will be leading you through most of your activities and be with you here most of the time at this camp. If not me, then it will usually be Jerome right here." He beckoned to a large, tan man behind him. With his long dark hair and almost black eyes, I guessed he was of Native American descent. Jerome is a junior counselor and also in charge of you all. Now this is an electronic-free camp, so that means you will all be putting your phones in this basket, and you won't see them again for the rest of the time you are here. He picked up a large blue basket and held it out. I heard several sighs and moans as everyone reached down to get their phone. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, realizing I hadn't texted my mom or charged it once I had. Luckily it still had 5% left. I opened the only text I had, a 6-sentence one from my mom. "Hey honey. I know you are probably asleep when I'm sending this to you, but I just wanted to say that I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you a lot. It's going to be hard around the house here alone, but I have Lucy here to keep me company. I know you were reluctant to go to this camp, but you needed some fresh air. I know this will be good for you, and I hope that you try to have a good time." I smiled a little, and replied, "Thanks Mom, I'm going to miss you a lot. I'll have a good time for you. Love you, and see you in a month." I hit send and then walked over and put my phone in the blue basket. "David freaking Yates, it's good to see you my man." I felt a hand squeeze my shoulder and turned around to see Tyler with a huge grin on his face. "What's up dude? I can't believe we actually got the same cabin. That's lucky as shit. Hey you two, listen." I stopped talking when I heard James shout. We turned around to face him. "So you all aren't gonna be using anything electronic for the rest of your time here? During your free time after lunch, you can read or write letters home, or do whatever, as long as you don't get in trouble. I'll tell you all about that more later. Now every day you will wake up at 6:30, except for Sundays, which you will wake up at 8. You will have 30 minutes to shower and get dressed, and then breakfast will be served. Breakfast runs from 7 to 8 and you can show up anytime during it, but you are not allowed to skip it. From there you will have another 30 minutes to get ready for your first activity. Since it is your first day here, this day will be different from a normal day, and be all about unpacking and taking a tour of the camp." He stopped when a large bell began to ring, echoing across the camp. "That's the breakfast bell. We'll talk more after it. Any questions?" "Yeah," said a tall mixed African American. "Where's the bathroom? I gotta take a massive dump." The group erupted in laughter. James and Jerome didn't look that amused. "The bathrooms are separate from the cabins. There is a concrete path leading to them. There are 2 separate buildings, and they are both off and a little in the woods. Don't worry, the lights will be on at night. The larger one is mostly showers and the smaller one is mostly toilets. Anyone else?" No one else opened their mouth. "All right, you have a while to eat, so anyone who wants to take a shower can go do it now," James said before turning around and walking out the door. "Lord knows we all need one," Tyler said. We all followed them. I bent my head down and smelled myself. I thought as I recoiled at my smell. I decided to follow Tyler and go take a shower, but not before running back and grabbing a towel and a change of clothes out of my massive bag. The cabins and the camp were now much better illuminated with the sunlight, and I could make out the details. The cabins were all fairly close to each other and connected by a concrete walkway that ran on the sides of each one. With 4 cabins on each side, it made a sort of rectangular shape, with a sizable grassy area on the inside. There was a fight cabin on the outside of the rectangle, closer to the road. The grassy area was lined with lines to hang your clothes on to dry. The lines ran parallel to the cabins and there was one for each cabin. The concrete trail split off from the rectangle and led a good distance off to the edge of the woods, and then split into 2 lines which led to a smaller building and a larger one. The larger one was still around the same size as a cabin. Geez, they weren't kidding about the distance of the bathrooms. I wonder why they put them so far away? I thought to myself as we began to walk towards them. As I got closer I saw more and more people going in and out, and figured that the chances of there being a line to shower were high. I was right, as I saw a group of around 5 guys standing around holding their towels, soap, and shampoo. I thought about leaving but ultimately decided to wait. I didn't want to smell in the cafeteria with a bunch of strangers, and I decided this was a good time to catch up with Tyler, who I had hardly spoken to since school had gotten out. Mostly I was just glad that the showers were their own individual cells, and that it wasn't one huge room where you had to turn around and face the wall not to see the other guys. The line didn't take that long, but it wasn't as short as the shower. Like with the people before me, everyone was shouting at me to constantly hurry. I don't think I had ever had to shower so quickly in my life. The whole ordeal lasted around 30 minutes, which still left me another 30 to eat. Tyler and I didn't know where the cafeteria was, so we just followed a guy from another cabin who told us he was going there too. Leaving the little rectangle of cabins we walked out onto the large U-shaped street. I now also noticed a little open shed-like building on each side of the U. One was on the girls' side and one was the guys' side. I saw a couple of girls and guys walking around, probably heading back to their cabins or to breakfast also. We followed the guy to the large building on the tip of the U. It was a large brown building with 2 staircases leading up the side of the front to 2 large, dark brown, wooden doors. It was by far larger than any of the cabins. I assume this was either a cafeteria or the main building and used as the central hub of the camp. The guy led us around the main building, so I guess the latter was the case. We made our way around the building to see a slightly smaller one behind. This one was slightly higher on a hill and had a large staircase leading up to a porch. A lot of people were coming in and out, so I automatically assumed that it was the cafeteria. I felt my stomach growl as I made my way up the stairs. I hadn't eaten since the bus ride, and that only been a tiny snack. The whiff of fried eggs and bacon was a welcome smell once I stepped in. The inside of the cafeteria looked like almost any other cafeteria in the world, aside from a strange small wooden wall that judged out about a third on the far right wall. The counter where they loaded the food onto the trays was on the left side. There was also a salad bar on that side of the room running parallel to the wall across from us. The line to get food was short, which I figured was because of the fact that we only had 20 minutes left to eat now. The cafeteria was decently full, with about half girls and half guys. The girls mostly sat separate from the guys, which didn't surprise me. It wasn't until we had gotten our food that I realized you had to sit at the table designated for your cabin. There were 2 other people at our table. The tall guy from earlier who had made the bathroom joke, and his shorter but buff friend. "What's y'all's names?" Tyler asked once we sat down. "I'm Josh," said the mixed one. "And I'm Steven," the buff one responded. "Where the heck is everyone else?" I asked them. "I guess they decided to eat before showering." "Doesn't surprise me, we were all super hungry," Steven responded. "And the counselors?" Tyler asked. "They went back too," Steven responded again. "So they don't give a crap if sat at another table or something like that? I mean, how can they stop us if they aren't here?" I asked. "There are still counselors here," Josh flicked his head backwards. I looked behind him and saw a skinny man with shaggy hair wearing a gray counselor shirt. He was too focused on eating to notice us eyeing him. "Our counselors seem super strict. I hope they aren't super hard asses and don't let us do anything fun," Tyler said. "Yeah, did you see that Indian dude? I don't think he changed his facial expression the entire time this morning," Josh grinned. "And you had the balls to say that stupid shit to him about taking a dump," Tyler began laughing. We all followed when we remembered the incident that had only taken place a little over an hour ago. "I mean, sure they are strict, but at least they'll keep us from doing anything stupid," I added in, trying to defend the counselors. I didn't exactly enjoy strict people, but they usually got their job and done the way they wanted it to be done. Tyler gave me his little look of disapproval that he gives me a lot. Dude, it's summer camp, not a damn military camp. We should be able to have all the fun we want. And not have some hard-ass counselors be on our own asses all the time, he said. I agree with you. Who knows, maybe they'll lighten up as the trip goes on. Me and Steven are gonna head back, see you all back at the cabin, Josh said as he and Steven got up. See ya, Tyler and I both spoke at the same time. The food wasn't of great quality and tasted like the food we had at our school. I was so hungry I hardly cared, and wolfed it all down in a matter of minutes. Tyler was bigger than me and went back to get seconds, but I was full now and waited for him to finish. Once we were both done, we decided to make our way back to the cabin. I am glad Olivia dumped me right before I came here now, Tyler remarked as we made our way past one of the girls' tables. I just laughed in response. The cabin was alive with action when we got back, as everyone was moving around, putting their stuff up, and making their beds. I had nothing to do, so I decided to lay back on my bed, and fidget with a Rubik's Cube while I waited for the rest of the cabin to be done. I never realized how much I relied on my phone for entertainment until now. Eventually, James came out of his room. Alright guys, we have a change of plans. Instead of touring the camp, we have decided to jump into our activities the first day. Here's how activities work here at Camp Meadowlark. Activities consist of doing things like water skiing, fishing, archery, and much more. Based on the activity, you will have 1 or 2 a day, maybe even 3 on special occasions. Usually, 2 cabins will be doing the same activity together, and the matches will vary. Today we will be fishing. We will fish down at the lake and we will be doing it all day. Get what you need and we will head out in 10 minutes, he spoke to us. I was glad to be taking it easy on the first day and considered our cabin lucky. I had never been to Oregon before, so I wasn't sure what to expect of the temperature. I had worn jeans on the plane and bus ride but switched to khaki shorts after I had showered this morning, as the temperature was pretty warm. I decided to leave what I had on, only adding a blue baseball cap to cover my curly dark hair. We grouped up outside the front door of our cabin, with Jerome being the only counselor with us. Where's James? Someone asked him. Doing other stuff, he responded swiftly. Once everyone was ready, we began to walk towards the direction of the cafeteria. I hoped to see Philip as we walked, as I really wanted to ask him about the noise I had heard last night. We continued walking past the cafeteria, and down a rocky road, that I imagined wrapped around the camp. Walking down it I noticed more rundown and old wooden buildings, and some had 2 floors. I imagined they weren't well taken care of, and asked Jerome what they were. Old cabins they don't use anymore, he said. This was the only word he spoke our entire walk to the lake. He also kept the same stern and serious look on his face. Something about them gave me really creepy vibes. After around a 15-minute walk we came up the lake, which was larger than I had imagined it would be. The area we came down to had 2 little sheds, and a large dock, with canoes tied up on the side. I also noticed a large green boathouse on the right side of the docks. The docks were near the edge of the lake, as the left side didn't run into a shore but turned sharply to the left to make the lake in the shape of a large L. I couldn't see how big the other area of the lake was due to my position. Although we were near the right edge of the lake, it stretched at least 4 football fields in front of us before reaching the other side. There were no other buildings. I could see the shore, and it was overgrown with trees reaching out over the water. With the mountains in the far back, it would have made a really good picture. But I didn't have a camera with me. There was a group of guys already fishing, with another counselor watching them. The only one of these guys I recognized was Nixon, so I didn't know what cabin this was. Among them was another man who wasn't a counselor, and I didn't recognize him. He wore a white t-shirt with a red handkerchief tied around his neck like a scarf. With his gray hair and wrinkled face, I guessed he had to be around 50. He came up running to use when he saw our group walking up. Jerome, it's good to see you. These must be your boys. Yes, this is my cabin. James is busy doing other things, so it's my job to watch them today. I liked this guy already, as he gave off a much nicer vibe than our own counselors. Alright guys, he turned to face us. My name is Mr. Roberts. I'm in charge of all the water activities here at Camp Meadowlark, including everything from fishing to skiing. I've been working here for most of my life, and I love it. So I'm all about having the most fun we can. Follow me and I'll take you to pick out your rods. We followed him to one of the sheds. The inside wasn't painted like the exterior and was filled with cobwebs. It did have rows of a variety of fishing rods, from spinners to bamboo. You can pick any you want. Anything but the fly rods, as those are only used for certain occasions, Mr. Roberts said. We all wasted no time grabbing a rod and heading out. Fishing was something Tyler and I did a lot, and I enjoyed it. I was hoping a little to start off with some new experience, but I didn't mind relaxing now, even if I didn't catch anything. I grabbed a spinner and headed over to one of the docks. While I fished, I could only think about the noise I had heard the previous night. At one point I reached down into my pocket, expecting to feel my phone, but felt nothing. I had forgotten I had put my phone up. This could have been solved a lot easier with a quick search on the web. I noticed Mr. Roberts had an old Labrador Retriever with him and thought back about the missing pets. I had seen several other dogs around the camp also at this point. Hey, may I ask you something? I went up to him. Yes? I heard some pets were going missing around the area. Have you all had any issue with that? The expression on his face changed from a moment to friendly to one almost of panic, before returning to friendly again. How do you know that? He asked, smiling. I saw in a newspaper article on the way here. No, we haven't. No dangerous wildlife would come close to this many people. Our pets are safe. I figured I struck a nerve with him with my question and walked away. He had probably had a tragedy with a pet himself or something in the past. We continued to fish the rest of the day, only breaking during lunch. At lunch, you didn't have to sit with your cabins. Now that I wasn't as hungry, the cheap taste of the food was a lot more noticeable. I continued to sit in the lunchroom even after I finished eating, waiting to see Philip, but I never did. Eventually, I left and went back to fishing. I never caught anything, but Tyler caught one and so did Steven. I remembered seeing Steven with a small group of us who came to cabin 5 from the bus I was on, so I asked him about the screech. He told me he had fallen asleep right after we arrived. Eventually, we got out for dinner, and our activity was done. Dinner was by far the highest quality of all the meals, being nice bacon cheeseburgers. I swallowed mine quickly, and once again looked around for Philip. And once again I didn't see him. It was a lot harder to search through because the cafeteria was crowded with the entire camp at dinner. After dinner, they gave us an hour-long free period, where you could do pretty much anything. A good number of people went to play tennis, ping pong, basketball, or one of the many other sports you could play. Tyler had asked me if I wanted to go play some basketball with him, but I declined, still wanting to find Philip. It took me around half the time, but eventually the idea that he would probably not have ever left his cabin occurred to me. I made my way back to cabin 4 and pushed the screen door open. It was empty, save from one person sitting on their bed, reading a book. He looked up and I immediately recognized him as Philip. Dude, I've been looking all over for you. Where were you at lunch and dinner? I spoke to him. I didn't eat lunch, and I ate dinner very quickly, he responded. No wonder you're so skinny, I laughed. What are you reading though? Oh, it's The Shining, by Stephen King. A story about this family that moves into a hotel to look out for it during the winter. But it turns out the hotel is haunted and... I think I've seen the movie. It was pretty good. Yeah, the book's better though. Stanley Kubrick kinda changed the story up. You should read it sometime. If I ever have time. Listen, I came to ask you about something I heard last night. I noticed Philip's interest increased dramatically, and he set the book down. What was the noise? He asked curiously. I know there are things like owls and mountain lions out here, but last night when I was trying to fall asleep, I heard something different. It was like a high-pitched growl. But almost machinery-like also. It's hard to describe. I was wondering if you heard something like that too? No, I fell asleep pretty quickly. You sure it wasn't what, a mountain lion? Or a bear? I'm no expert on what those creatures sound like, and I don't have any way to Google the sounds. So I guess I'm not entirely sure. But hey, you told me you like this kind of stuff. And there was this one really weird thing that set it out from any normal sound. When it happened, it was like every other noise in the first just stopped. Just took a temporary break. It was like everything else was scared of it. Whatever it was. Philip sat in silence for a moment, looking off and possibly contemplating what it could have been. Then he smiled a little and spoke. That's interesting. I'll make sure to listen up tonight and see if I can hear it again. I could tell he was happy from this and happy to have a little mystery on the camp trip. It's like one of those horror movies, huh? I grinned. Before Philip could respond, we were interrupted by the long ringing of the camp bell. I thought that only went off for breakfast? I asked aloud. Let's go see what this is about, Philip said as he jumped off his bed. We walked outside the cabin, and saw other kids all walking in the direction of the main building and the U. I figured it was a meeting and we followed them. Everyone was gathering in the grassy field where the flagpole was. I noticed an old Ford truck parked, and a Jeep Wrangler parked in front of it. Two older men were walking from the cars to the front of the gathering. I recognized Mr. Edwards as one of the men, but he was behind someone even older, who I didn't recognize. I also noticed all the counselors standing behind the campers. We made our way down and took our place in the back. No one was sitting down, so we continued to stand. Most people were talking, but I kept my focus on what the old man was doing. Mr. Edwards handed him a mic, then took his place standing behind him. The old man flicked a little switch on the microphone and it turned on with a little beep. Around half of the conversations died. "Hello," he spoke slowly, with a sort of croak in his voice. The rest of the conversations died and it was silent. The old man coughed before speaking again. "Greetings, campers, and welcome to Camp Meadowlark. We have all worked hard to prepare for you all to come here, and are glad you have finally made it. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Riley McCormick, the owner of this lovely camp. For those of you who may have heard, my brother, Jeremy, passed away last December. As he was the previous owner of the camp, it was left without someone to run it. The camp had been in our family for years, and they had sacrificed a lot to build this camp. I wasn't going to let it shut down, or be sold to someone else, so I took charge." He stopped and turned around to face the sunset. "We normally host meetings inside the main hall, but it was just so beautiful out this evening." He then turned around back to face us. "We had to change quite a good number of things, and hire almost an entirely new staff. Very few original people stayed, including this good man right here, Thomas Edwards, our head counselor." He turned and gave a nod to Mr. Edwards, who thanked him almost silently. I wasn't sure if we should be clapping or not, but the crowd remained silent, so I did. "The majority of our activities have stayed the same. I know you all started them today." He then pointed to a random girl standing near the front. "Tell me, honey, what did you do today?" The girl was silent for a moment but finally spoke. We rode horseback," she responded. "Horseback, an old tradition here at Camp Meadowlark. Back in the 70s when we first started this camp, horseback was one of the only things you could do. Before this was a camp, it was partially our family ranch, and my mother liked to keep horses. We only had about 5, but we had so few campers back then it didn't even matter." He gave out a creaky, low attempt at a laugh. I could tell this man had been around for a long time. He coughed heavily and started again. "Our family was one of the wealthiest in Oregon, but we dropped down low after putting all of the money to run this camp. But it's not about the money, it's about spreading joy to a great group of young kids. It's been a great pleasure meeting you all, but I must hand the mic over to Mr. Edwards here, who is going to tell you all about what fun we will have here." He handed the mic back to Mr. Edwards and stepped back. I had mixed feelings about Mr. McCormick. I felt a little unnerved at first by him but then realized he was probably just a senile old man. Mr. Edwards talked more about the camp activities. I teased all any of the staff had talked about today, so I just zoned out. Eventually, he finished and handed the mic back to Mr. McCormick. "As I said, I'm very happy to meet all of you all. We will have these meetings maybe around twice a week, and sometimes I leave and tell you all some stories, funny and scary." He took a pause. "Y'all are dismissed. Have a good first night." The sudden murmur picked up as everyone began moving around frantically. "Thank God, it's over," I thought to myself as I began to walk back towards the cabins. "All right," I said to Philip, who was walking behind me. "Don't forget tonight, stay up a little late in your bed, and listen closely," I said to him. "I will," he responded. "And meet me at breakfast, at 7:30, I pressed on. We were coming up on our cabins now. "Good night, I'll see you tomorrow," I said as we parted ways. The sun had almost set completely, and all that was left was any orange streak over the tops of the mountains. Lights out was at 9:30, and it was only 8:15 right now. I wasn't sure why they gave us so much time, as it didn't long for me to change clothes and hop into bed. I partly figured it was because of the girls, who took longer to get ready for things in my experience. But once I headed to the bathroom to brush my teeth and shower, I realized why they had given us all this time. The line for showering, using the sink, and even just using the bathroom was over twice as long as the line this morning. I decided to skip showering tonight, since I hadn't gotten dirty fishing, and just shower again in the morning. It looked like the people showering now were getting yelled at even more to hurry. By the time I had gotten everything done in the bathroom, it was 30 minutes till lights out. Everyone else was in my cabin already and was either talking or laying in their beds fidgeting around. I sat in mine playing a Rubik's Cube until a slow bugle sound filled the night. I think it may have been some military song, but I couldn't remember the name. "Alright everybody, lights out." Jerome walked through the center of the cabin. Everyone stopped talking and got into their own beds, as the bugle died off. "Remember, we are waking up at 6:30 tomorrow, so try to get some sleep," he said before going back to the end of the cabin, where he and James' rooms were. He sat down in a lawn chair that was sitting out in front of his room and silently observed us. I assumed he was making sure we went to bed, so I laid in mine silently, pretending to be asleep. The night was once again alive with the sounds of the thousands of creatures that inhabited it. The mix of all the noises was peaceful, and I found it hard to stay awake and concentrate. After around 10 minutes Jerome got up and went inside his own room. I sat up, to help myself stay awake better. I waited, and started to drift off. But just as I was beginning to drift away, I heard the screech again. And this time, it was coming from a different spot. I had previously thought it could be a factory or something because of the metallic scraping part of it, but it was clear whatever it was moving. It had to be an animal, I felt. I felt chills go down my spine as the screech ended and the night was silent. For a brief moment, I poked up and looked around the cabin to see if anyone else was awake. But no one was moving. Someone else at this camp had to have heard the noise, and I wanted to find them.